Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm just doing a quick discussion of The Thundering Sword. For those who don't know, Cheng Pei-Pei passed away on July 17th this year, and we're going to be covering a number of her movies in the podcast as a group with me, Joel, and Adam. But in the meantime, I've just been kind of going over some of her movies I haven't seen in a while, and today I watched The Thundering Sword, which is, again, it's not her second movie, but it's like the second like wuxia martial arts movie. If you're not counting stuff like Monkey Goes West and all that sort of thing. So the last time I think years ago I went through like all of her movies or all of her martial arts movies that I could find, and I don't think I went in them in order. I went through them just however I happened to have them or whatever. Some of them were harder to get than others. And so I've been trying to go in order. So I watched Come Drink With Me again recently, but I've talked about that so much here, I didn't think that it necessarily needed another discussion. And I decided to do Thundering Sword next because I hadn't seen it in so long. I think I have something about it up on the blog, but I don't even really remember what I wrote. But it's during that late 60s period where a lot of her movies are kind of more in the swashbuckly style. But this one kind of stands out because it's one of these movies. There's a lot of them that are sort of they take the Heaven Sword Dragon Saber story. This one takes just the prelude, like the opening, that sort of explains what happened with Wuji's parents. They remove the whole Wuji thing and they just focus on the situation between the parents. So this is sort of like a they take that beginning part of the star-crossed lovers who have a tragic ending, and they just squeeze it for all the melodrama that they can. And so it ends up being, I think, a really interesting entry in her filmography. I think it was made in 1967, and Lolier is in it. He plays the brother, if you're familiar with the Heaven Sword Dragon Saber story, who becomes crippled. They change some of the groups and names around. Like her character in this is like Su Jiao Jiao, and I think in Heaven Sword Dragon Saber it was Yin Susu, and it was Heavenly Eagle Cult in Heaven Sword Dragon Saber. I think they gave it a different name in this one, but those are all kind of like minor details. The main plot points are the same, where she ends up they're all vying for this thing called the Thundering Sword, and it's hinted at that it's a pair, and that if the pairs clash, that it's it's going to be this momentous event in the martial world, and so everybody's trying to find it, including her, and she ends up using poison on a character who is the sworn brother or belongs to the same sect as a guy that she is in love with. The plot is a little more complicated than that, but she tries to send him back to the headquarters so that he reaches there in safety, can get the antidote and everything. But the escort company she hires is attacked, and the Lolier character is crippled, and this sort of begins a whole series of unintended consequences and misunderstandings that lead to tragedy in the story. She goes to get revenge. She goes and she attacks the escort company and murders people that were supposed to protect him, and then that even explodes the situation further. I think it really works. Number one, I like seeing Cheng Pei-Pei play a character like this. This is a darker character, so it's closer more to to her character in Jade Raksha, or even in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where she's just playing a much darker character. She's not a villain, but she belongs to an evil sect, and she's the daughter of the head of the evil sect, and she's doing a lot of shady things. But because she falls in love and is trying to reform, her character is more complicated than that. This is also a movie that has something that I talk about a lot on the blog, which is dungeons, like tombs, trap tombs, that kind of thing. Something that people, I think, again, people don't associate this with wuxia, but it's in a ton of wuxia where you have stuff that could easily appear in a tabletop RPG. I like the the fight choreography, and again, it's fairly straightforward fight choreography, but there's kind of a flowing quality to it that I really like. It reminds me, there's one particular scene in Come Drink With Me, the scene where she's fighting in the temple and her robe kind of slides off and she's moving in a very flowing way. And I feel like a lot of her fight scenes were like that in this movie. It was sort of that same kind of motion. And again, this is one of those movies that's very stagey. It's very much about these, this sort of classic Shaw Brothers production. So again, it has kind of what I call a golden age of Hollywood feel, where there's swelling music, and it's also traditional in that there's a lot of not quite music numbers, but there's scenes where there's somebody singing in the background to illustrate something, and there are also scenes where one of the characters themselves actually sings. I think Cheng Pei-Pei's character in this at one point sings a song in a pavilion. So it just kind of has like this classic look and feel. There's one scene in particular that I thought was kind of interesting when she first meets the man that she falls in love with, and she's riding on a horse, and she rides away, and it's playing this music with these vocals, and the vocals and music are matching the movement of the horse, but everything looks kind of slowed down, so it's got a very dreamlike quality. But yeah, this was when, again, I hadn't seen this in so long, and I forgot that this one was very distinct from a lot of the other ones that came out in this period. And this is one of the ones I remember really liking. So it's definitely, I think, above average for a couple of reasons. You're not going to go to this one. You're not going to see you're not necessarily going to come to this one for the fights. Like, there are fights, and the fights are good, but they're not, they're not like something out of like Lady Hermit or something. But you're really going to be here for the drama. And this movie really, like I said, it squeezes every drop of melodrama that it can. This is one of those movies that reminds you what an emotional genre it can be. A lot of times I think when people think about the genre, they think of stoic characters who adhere to this sort of code of chivalry, or maybe, have this impression that they're not in touch with their emotions or something. I've always found it to be a very emotional genre. You think of a movie like The Bride with White Hair, and this movie is just like scene after scene of characters really letting their emotions out, being deeply conflicted by what's going on, and the tragedy that sort of stems from the optics of the situation, where it looks like one thing happened but something else actually happened. I find all that very interesting. That keeps me very engaged with the film. And so for that reason, that's why I would put this one in the above average category. And again, I think, these are characters that they are operating in a world where there's a, there is like a code of honor among the martial heroes and the world that they live in, but that's used to help enhance the drama and enhance the emotion, not take away from it. So yeah, this is 1967, and it's called The Thundering Sword. It's only about an hour and 37 minutes, I think. It's not that long. I could have the runtime off, but it's not too long. And I think that if you I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Cheng Pei-Pei's passing. I think that she was a remarkable actress, and I particularly like her in these classic wuxia films and films like that. And also, I think if people go back and watch some of these earlier movies, one thing that you'll notice, because a lot of people know her from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, is you'll see a lot of callbacks to the stuff that she did in these movies. Like, for example, I know there's like that famous scene in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon where she's facing the camera and she stabs the guy behind her. That's right out of Lady Hermit. That's like almost frame for frame right out of Lady Hermit. So I mean, I think that it's if you're a fan of that movie, sort of like if you saw Kill Bill and you went down that rabbit hole of watching, all of the different movies that inspired it, definitely it's worth taking a look at Cheng Pei-Pei's career. I would start with Come Drink With Me. That's definitely the one to start with. There are other movies you can see, like I said, like the Monkey Goes West movies that she's in, and she has some like more I don't know what you would call them, like more movies like focused on things like dance and things like that you can see her in. But if you're interested in her martial arts films, start with Come Drink with Me, and I would then watch The Thundering Sword. Uh, you can skip Dragon Creek. I've seen Dragon Creek. That's more of a that's more. It's got elements of action, but it's really more of a drama, I think. Golden Swallow for sure would be the next thing that I would see. That Fiery Girl, Jade Raksha, Dragon Swamp, The Flying Dagger, Raw Courage, The Golden Sword, Lady of Steel, Brothers Five, The Shadow Whip, and then Lady Hermit. And then she has a series of other movies that came out. I think after Lady Hermit, she kind of took a break, if I remember. Um, and then she came back with movies like None But the Brave and Whiplash, and those are all worth watching. There's she had sort of, some of them are more kung fu craze era films, but it's those early wuxia films that I would definitely recommend. And also she's in a number of like obviously Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but she has a cameo in Wing Chun, the movie with Michelle Yeoh. She's in a bunch of other movies and other TV shows and stuff after that. But I really recommend this like slew of wuxia films from about 1966 to 1971 that she was in. And again, the order would be Come Drink with Me, The Thundering Sword, Golden Swallow, That Fiery Girl, The Jade Raksha, Dragon Swamp, The Flying Dagger, Raw Courage, The Golden Sword, Lady of Steel, Brothers Five, The Shadow Whip, Lady Hermit. There's a lot of movies there. There's a lot of good stuff. Some of them do kind of blend together. Like I remember when I was watching them, movies like, and maybe as I go back and rewatch these, I'll notice more distinction. But I remember stuff like Raw Courage and The Golden Sword kind of blending together a little bit in my mind. But I'd have to watch them again to really, and I could be even confusing those two with two other movies that were similar. But the point is, there were movies from that period that I remember being close enough in style that if you watch them back to back, you might confuse them a little bit. So I would recommend spacing out viewings. But yeah, again, this one, I don't know how many people listening are familiar with Heaven Sword Dragon Saber. It helps to be a little bit familiar with it. There's a lot of movies. Web of Death is another movie that does a similar type thing, where they just kind of take a chunk of that film or that book and they use it to build almost a different story around. But this one cleaves pretty close. It's just some of the key details are different enough that it makes a massive difference. Like not having Wuji in the story, for example. In the Heaven Sword Dragon Saber, this is all about introducing Wuji's story, and so the tragedy that happens to his parents becomes this thing that kind of hangs over him for his life. So here, that obviously isn't the case, but they get really good drama out of it. And again, I really do love these stagey productions. I like that, the logic of a stage production and how, you have these scenes where they're all kind of set in this one spot, and people might be talking in a building, and somebody who's also important to the plot happens to walk by in frame and eavesdrop on them. It's a little simpler than something you might see in like a more fancily edited film with more locations shot outside and all that. But for me, this really kind of fires up my imagination. There's a scene where they're sort of up in the mountains, and it's a set, and that there's like paintings in the background and stuff like that. But it really gives it like an exaggerated look that you wouldn't have if you shot it on a real mountain. And also the artistry is there because people are, if you're shooting a mountain, you're not fabricating the mountain, you're not making the mountain. The mountain's there, and the artistry comes in how you're going to be filming the mountain. But here, the artistry is in the production of the set as well. So, so Cheng Pei-Pei is a really incredible actress, in my opinion. I love her facial expressions when she's fighting. I like she's really good at playing these. I don't know what the word is. Stern's the wrong word, but these characters that are just have a lot of grit to them and ferocity, and she can convey that really well with her eyes. I also love watching her fight scenes. Again, this is more late '60s style, but I like the way that she sort of is able to flow on screen, the way that she's able to use her footwork. And also, she gets better and better and better as each movie comes out because you can see her uh, just getting more comfortable with the weapons and stuff the longer she's doing this. And so, this is only the second film, and then by the time you get to Lady Hermit, she's unbelievable. So yeah, again, check out the Thundering Sword. Check out Cheng Pei-Pei. I'd encourage people to go and check out her Wikipedia page and see like all the different things that she's done. Um, you know, I don't normally cover things like this too much when an actor or an actress passes away, but in the case of Cheng Pei-Pei, she had such an influence on me when it comes to stuff like wuxia that that I really wanted to do this, and I want to do a series of movie reviews with Joel and Adam because, like I said, she's a really significant figure. She's not. You know, I think I mentioned this somewhere else, but like I think you don't get a movie like Kill Bill without without Cheng Pei-Pei. I feel like actresses like her were really important for those kinds of movies becoming a thing. So yeah. So anyways, I'll let you go, and until next time, I will talk to you later.